My wife smiled at me across the breakfast table that Tuesday morning, the same radiant smile that had captivated me 15 years ago. What I didn't know was that behind those loving eyes, she was calculating exactly how much my destruction would be worth. Sarah had always been meticulous. Color-coded calendars, perfectly organized closets, dinner parties that ran like clockwork. I used to joke that she could plan a military operation in her sleep. Turns out, I wasn't wrong. It started with small things I barely noticed. A new gym membership she was surprisingly excited about. Late nights at her book club that seemed to run longer than usual. Phone calls she'd take in the other room, speaking in hushed tones about work projects. But Sarah didn't work. She hadn't for 8 years, not since we'd agreed she'd focus on managing our household while I built my software consulting business. A business that, thanks to a breakthrough contract with a major tech company, had just made us genuinely wealthy for the first time in our marriage. The morning everything changed started like any other. Sarah kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and reminded me about dinner with her parents that evening. She was wearing that blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one that made her eyes look like sapphires. "Don't forget to transfer the money to our joint savings today," she said, adjusting my tie with those delicate fingers I'd held through everything. "We need to start planning for the house renovation." I nodded, distracted by emails already flooding my phone. The big contract had just gone through, and my business account had received the largest payment in my company's history. $800,000. Life-changing money. Money that would let us finally buy that dream house in the suburbs, maybe start the family we'd been talking about. I transferred $400,000 to our joint account that afternoon, keeping the rest in my business account for taxes and expenses. Sarah had always handled our finances anyway, she was better with numbers than I was. Or so I thought. That evening, walking into her parents' house, I felt something was off. The usual warm greetings seemed forced. Her father barely looked at me. Her mother kept shooting concerned glances at Sarah, the kind of looks that pass between women when they're sharing a secret. "Michael," her father said during dinner, his voice unusually formal. "Sarah tells us you've been working late a lot lately." I glanced at Sarah, confused. I'd been working normal hours for months now, finally able to relax after landing the big contract. "Actually, I've been home more than usual. Business is going really well." The uncomfortable silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Sarah's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. "Honey, you know how you get when you're stressed. Sometimes you don't realize how much you're working." Something cold settled in my stomach. Why was she lying? And why did her parents look at me like I was a stranger? The drive home was quiet. Sarah stared out the window, that same distant look she'd had for weeks now. When I asked if everything was okay, she gave me that smile again. "Of course, darling. Just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was wide awake, my mind racing through details I'd been too trusting to notice. The new clothes in her closet. The way she'd started working out religiously. The phone calls. The lies about my work schedule. I waited until she was asleep, then quietly went to my home office. Our joint bank account showed a balance of $847. $400,000, gone. Transferred out that very afternoon, just hours after I'd put it in. My hand shook as I called the bank's emergency line. The transfer had been legitimate, authorized with both our signatures. But I'd never signed anything. Which meant I spent the next 3 days playing detective in my own life. What I found was a masterpiece of deception that would have impressed the most skilled con artists. Sarah hadn't just been planning to leave me. She'd been systematically destroying my credibility, my relationships, and my future. The gym membership? She'd been meeting with divorce attorneys, using the location as cover. The book club? Sessions with a private investigator who'd been building a case against me for months. The late-night phone calls? Conversations with her brother, a lawyer, about the best way to claim I'd been emotionally abusive and financially controlling. She'd been documenting everything. Photos of me working late, spun as evidence of neglect. Recordings of arguments I didn't even remember having, edited to make me sound controlling and aggressive. She'd even convinced mutual friends that I was having an affair, showing them text messages that I later realized she'd fabricated. But the most brilliant part of her plan was the money. She'd waited until the exact moment when our joint account had the maximum balance, then transferred it all to an account in the Cayman Islands. An account that, according to the paperwork I found hidden in her closet, was supposed to be untraceable. The divorce papers were already prepared. I found them in her car, along with a detailed timeline of how she planned to serve them. She was going to claim I'd been hiding money, that I'd become abusive and controlling after the business success. She had witness statements from people I'd never met, claiming they'd seen me threatening her in public. Sarah had spent months creating an alternate reality where I was the villain and she was the victim. And according to her lawyer's notes, she expected to walk away with everything. The house, the business, the money, and my reputation in ruins. I sat in my office that night, staring at the evidence of her betrayal, and felt something I'd never experienced before. Not anger, not sadness, but a cold, calculating clarity that felt almost alien to me. Sarah wanted to play chess? Fine. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I was the same trusting, naive man she'd married. She'd forgotten that building a successful business requires more than technical skills. It requires understanding people, reading situations, and sometimes, playing the game better than your opponents. The next morning, I acted completely normal. I kissed her goodbye, told her I loved her, and went to work. But instead of going to my office, I drove to meet with my own lawyer. Not for divorce proceedings, but for something Sarah would never see coming. You see, while Sarah had been busy building her case against me, she'd overlooked something crucial. The money she'd stolen? It wasn't just our savings. It was my business account money, temporarily parked in our joint account before I could properly allocate it for taxes and expenses. What she'd done wasn't just morally wrong. It was embezzlement. Federal embezzlement, since the money had come from contracts with companies across state lines. And unlike divorce proceedings, where she could claim emotional abuse and financial control, embezzlement was a criminal matter with very clear evidence trails. But I wasn't going to destroy her the way she'd planned to destroy me. I was going to do something much more elegant. I spent the next week gathering evidence, but not the kind Sarah expected. I hired the same private investigator she'd used, discovered the real extent of her planning. The fake witness statements, the doctored photos, the coached testimony from her friends. Everything that would have destroyed me in divorce court. But I also found something else. Something that made me understand exactly why Sarah had been so desperate to get away with as much money as possible. She was pregnant. Not with my child, but with her personal trainers. The same personal trainer she'd been seeing for months under the guise of those gym sessions. The same man she'd been planning to move in with once the divorce was finalized. The timeline was perfect. She'd get divorced, claim I was abusive and controlling, take half of everything plus alimony, and then suddenly discover she was pregnant with her new boyfriend's child. A fresh start with a younger man and enough money to live comfortably forever. It was actually brilliant. Except for one thing she hadn't counted on. I loved her. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the lies and the systematic destruction of our life together, I still loved the woman I'd married. Which meant I wasn't going to destroy her the way she'd planned to destroy me. Instead, I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. Just not the way she expected. The morning I put my plan into action, Sarah was humming in the kitchen, making breakfast with the same cheerful demeanor she'd maintained for weeks. She had no idea that I knew about the money, the pregnancy, or the divorce papers hidden in her car. "Good morning, beautiful," I said, kissing her cheek. "I have something exciting to tell you." She looked up with those sparkling eyes, probably thinking I was about to announce another business success that would make her upcoming theft even more profitable. "I've been thinking about what you said about us needing a fresh start," I continued. "About how the money has been stressing us out, making us different people." Her smile faltered slightly. I don't remember saying that." "You're right, though. Money changes people. It makes them do things they never thought they'd do. So I've made a decision. I handed her a folder. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, probably expecting divorce papers or some kind of confrontation. Instead, she found something that made her face go completely white. I'm giving it all away, I said calmly. The business, the money, everything. I've established a foundation that will distribute our wealth to domestic violence shelters and legal aid organizations. Places that help people who've been betrayed by the people they trusted most. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You can't do that. That's our money. Our future. Actually, I can. And I have. The money you transferred to the Cayman Islands? That's been frozen by federal investigators. Turns out moving business funds to offshore accounts without proper documentation raises some interesting questions. I watched her face cycle through emotions. Confusion, anger, fear, and finally, calculation. She was already thinking about how to spin this, how to make herself the victim of my sudden charitable impulse. But here's the thing, Sarah. I'm not going to turn you in. I'm not going to expose your affair, or the fake witness statements, or the systematic way you've been destroying my reputation for months. I'm going to give you something better. I handed her another folder. This one contained divorce papers, but not the ones she'd prepared. I'm giving you the divorce you want. Clean, simple, no fault. You can keep the house, the cars, everything we've built together. All I ask is that you sign these papers and agree to split custody of our assets 50-50. Sarah's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? No catch. You want out? You're out. You want to start over with someone new? Go ahead. I won't stand in your way. She was suspicious now, waiting for the trap. But I wasn't setting a trap. I was offering her exactly what she'd been planning to take anyway, just without the lies and deception. What about the money? She asked quietly. What money? I told you, I gave it all away. To people who need it more than we do. To organizations that help victims of fraud and betrayal. Seemed like the right thing to do. That's when Sarah realized the true scope of what had happened. She'd planned to steal our future, but I'd given it away before she could take it. She'd wanted to destroy me and walk away rich, but now she was getting a divorce with nothing to show for months of planning. But the real kicker? The money she'd transferred to the Cayman Islands would be returned to the Federal Investigation Fund, and then distributed to charity. Every dollar she'd stolen would end up helping people she'd tried to defraud. You're insane, she whispered. You've thrown away everything we worked for. No, Sarah. I threw away everything you were planning to steal. There's a difference. She signed the papers that day, probably thinking she could still salvage something from her carefully laid plans. Maybe she thought she could take me to court, claim I'd acted irrationally in giving away our assets. Maybe she thought her lover would support her through the transition. But 6 months later, when the divorce was finalized, Sarah discovered that her personal trainer had moved on to another client. A younger, richer client who hadn't just lost everything in a messy divorce. Sarah was left with half of our remaining assets, which amounted to the house and about $50,000 in savings. Meanwhile, I'd started over completely. New apartment, new business, new life. It was terrifying and exhilarating and exactly what I needed. The foundation I'd established was helping hundreds of people who'd been betrayed by spouses, partners, and family members. I was getting thank you letters from people who'd been able to escape abusive relationships because of legal aid funding. I was also getting something else. Peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't wondering what Sarah was thinking, wasn't trying to interpret her moods or guess at her real feelings. I knew exactly where I stood, exactly what I had, and exactly what I was worth. The funny thing about betrayal is that it reveals more about the betrayer than the betrayed. Sarah had shown me who she really was, and in doing so, she'd freed me from the illusion of our marriage. I'd been living with a stranger who'd been planning my destruction for months, maybe years. But I'd also learned something about myself. I was stronger than I'd thought, more resilient than I'd imagined. I could lose everything and still find a way to build something meaningful from the ashes. A year later, I got a call from Sarah. She was having money problems, struggling to maintain the house on her own. She wanted to know if I'd consider getting back together, if we could work things out. I listened to her talk about how sorry she was, how she'd made mistakes, how she'd never stopped loving me. She was using the same tone she'd used when she was planning to destroy me, the same careful manipulation disguised as vulnerability. I appreciate the call, Sarah, I said when she finished. But I'm not the same person you married. I'm not even the same person you divorced. I'm someone who learned that love without trust is just elaborate self-deception. But we had 15 years together, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. Doesn't that mean anything? It means I'm grateful for the lesson. Thank you for teaching me what I'm really worth. I hung up and went back to my new life. My smaller apartment, my growing business, my work with the foundation. I was dating again, cautiously but hopefully. I was building relationships based on honesty instead of assumption, trust instead of convenience. Sarah had wanted to take everything from me, but in the end, she'd given me something much more valuable. She'd given me myself back. The last I heard, she was working retail, struggling to make ends meet, still single. Her perfect plan had backfired in ways she never could have anticipated. She'd thought she was playing chess, but she'd actually been playing with fire. And sometimes, when you play with fire, you're the one who gets burned. Looking back, I realized that Sarah's betrayal wasn't really about the money. It was about power. She wanted to control the narrative, to be the victim and the victor simultaneously. She wanted to rewrite our entire history to make herself the hero of her own story. But real power isn't about controlling other people. It's about controlling yourself. It's about choosing your response to betrayal, choosing your path forward, choosing who you want to be when everything you thought you knew falls apart. Sarah chose deception. I chose honesty. She chose destruction. I chose creation. She chose to tear down everything we'd built together. I chose to build something new and better from the pieces. The foundation we established has now helped over 1,000 people escape situations similar to what Sarah put me through. People who've been financially abused, emotionally manipulated, systematically deceived by the people they trusted most. Every success story, every life rebuilt, every family restored is a testament to the idea that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of something better. I think about Sarah sometimes, wonder if she ever truly understood what she threw away. Not the money, not the house, not the comfortable life we'd built together. But the chance to be genuinely loved and trusted by someone who would have done anything for her. She had everything she claimed to want. A husband who adored her, financial security, a future full of possibilities. But she chose to destroy it all for the chance to feel powerful, to feel in control, to feel like she'd won some kind of game I didn't even know we were playing. In the end, the only person she really defeated was herself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well, building something meaningful, and refusing to let someone else's darkness dim your light. Sarah wanted to take everything from me. Instead, she gave me everything I needed to become the person I was always meant to be. And for that, strangely enough, I'm grateful. What do you think? Have you ever experienced betrayal that completely changed your perspective on life? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that will make you think twice about the people you trust most.